Today we have lecture number 3. It's getting started with Vaadin, so Eclipse, Tomcat and Hello World. And we start by saying what are the requirements of a system if we want to develop something with Vaadin. Then we will try to set up Eclipse. We will show an example Hello World application. And then we will try to understand what's there behind the scenes. I will tell you how to debug the code, a simple way to debug it. Then we add some interaction to the project and we try to deploy it, and that will be it. Hopefully it will give you an overview of how the development of web applications with Vaadin looks like, at least the simple web applications. Alright, let's start with system requirements. So what is fixed or requirement for Vaadin development is Java version 1.6, and we need that for development. We need Java servlet container to deploy the application, and then we need a compatible web browser for testing and for using the application. The flexible things are that it can be any operating system, well, any Windows, Linux or Mac. Any servlet container, so it can be Jetty, it can be Tomcat, and a web browser that has JavaScript. So currently, to my knowledge, almost every web browser comes with JavaScript support. And then what I can suggest is a good Java integrated development environment, some debug tool for web pages. So the content of a web application, as we said last time, is generated as HTML, and it would be nice if we could see the HTML that was actually rendered by the request in the web application. And of course, for more complex projects, a source code repository. So as I said, we will be using Eclipse. The reasons why we are using Eclipse is that the Vaadin plugin to Eclipse has an official support. Eclipse supports build systems, so we are using Ivy. And then the code formatting rules can be exported and imported, and Vaadin community has official code formatting rules which can be downloaded and imported into Eclipse. So let's start by downloading Eclipse. So the version of Eclipse that you should download is Eclipse for Java EE developers. It's about 200 megabytes or slightly above 200 megabytes. And it's not to be confused with Eclipse for Java developers, which is smaller. It has 150 megs. So you should basically download it, unzip it and run it. This is the only step I managed to prepare on this computer, so I will try to go live with everything else and hopefully nothing fails. So now we should install Ivy. So new update site. And we should see 4 different options, so we select the first 3. So alright, so once Eclipse downloads everything, then we have to review the details, so we click next. Of course we accept the terms. Then Eclipse will complain about installing unsigned content. Of course we agree to that, and then it should ask for restarting itself. The next step will be to install Vaadin plugin, which is done in a similar way. Plugin http vaadin.com/eclipse. Then you see that there is one thing to select from, which is Vaadin plugin for Eclipse. And again, it can complain about unsigned content, and then it may prompt to restart itself. This is the restart prompt. Alright, so it seems everything is in place. Very important part is setting up the Eclipse environment. The next step are the save actions. Alright, let's move on to installing Tomcat. As I said, we need Tomcat to deploy applications and to actually run them. This will be installed locally on your development machine, which means you don't need any external server to test your application while you're developing it. Help install new software. Then from the list of available spaces we select, and from the list that tools platform SDK, so the latest version, 7 items, so it will take a while more, but comprehensive list. Again, we accept all the licenses, but not reading them. PowerPoint done, yep.
Once the SDK is in place, we install new local Tomcat 7 installation by window, preferences, servers. Then we select Tomcat 7. We want to install this locally, so we click download and install. We accept the terms and then select the directory we wish to install to. And once the installation is done, we press finish.
This is the list of other things you might want to configure with Eclipse. And we can start with the Hello World application. So let's start by File, New, Other. And if everything went well, there should be Vaadin available as project template. Vaadin 7 project. We use the project name, and then everything here stays as it should be. Next, next. Okay, so our new project looks in a project explorer more or less like shown on this picture. We see an application class or an entry point to our application, and then we see some other things we shouldn't have to worry about right now. So this is our code, the source code that is generated as a Hello World application. We should right click the project name in the project explorer. This is the tree on the left, and then run on server. We select Tomcat. We of course select that we should always use this server, and then we click finish. So if everything went well with the installation, then we should be able to do it. We now finish it, and the default, here is the console output from the Tomcat server. So it's starting, and once it starts, a new tab should open here. It should be a browser tab. That shows a button called Click Me, and when we click the button, then a new label with thank you for clicking is shown up. So, and now we close the browser window. We stop the server by pressing this terminate button here, and we can continue coding. And I will take that opportunity to explain the code almost line by line. So this is again how it looks like. At the beginning we create a class that extends UI. UI is a basic, you can consider it as a basic entry point to the application. It's a base class for any application or for any user interface your application might have. The protected method init is called when the execution starts, so this is where you should create your UI, and it takes a request as a parameter. Vertical layout that you see there, it helps arranging components. So lecture 4, the next lecture, will be about components. You will learn what they are, how to use them, what properties they have. Lecture 6 will be about layouts. So there are different layouts, not only vertical layout as you see here, but many of them. And then the lecture will cover that. The method setContent, well, as you can guess probably from the name, surprisingly sets the content of the application to the layout we have just created. Button, it creates a button, and they are created as regular Java objects, so there is no magic there, you just create a button. Of course, for the button to be used, we need to add it to to the layout, because we have created the button but it's not assigned anywhere, so it will not be visible in your application unless you add it to something that is already there. It's done of course with the method addComponent. And we have events and listeners as in regular Java application. So those of you who have programmed anything with Swing or any Java framework, basically there are always events and listeners. So Vaadin works exactly the same way. So you just add click listener. If we take a look at the previous slide, you see that as the response to the click listener, we add a new label to the layout that says thank you for clicking. So it doesn't differ very much from the from the desktop application that you can create with Java. I would risk that the code is like 80% the same in structure. And there is, apart from the Vaadin request parameter, there is nothing that would indicate that this is a web application and not the desktop application, which is very good. The philosophy behind Vaadin is to bring all the power of desktop application development to web applications. All right, so we have our application up and running, and we should try to debug it, because every software breaks, especially when you are developing it. So the first thing we do is that we place breakpoints. Breakpoints are those lines in code that will stop the execution and run a debugger so that you can see values of variables at this particular execution point. And for the purpose of the course, I decided the execution breakpoint should be the line where we create the label, so where the button is clicked. I will do that in a minute. And we toggle breakpoints in Eclipse by using Ctrl-Shift-B or Option-Shift-B on Macs. Alternatively, you can right-click the margin and set toggle breakpoint. You can see that there is a small dot here which indicates that this line is a breakpoint. And now to debug it, we right-click project name as if we were running it, but instead of run as, we click debug as and debug on server. And that enables server-side code debugging. So by server-side, I mean that none of the code that is run inside the browser, so any custom JavaScripts or things like that, will not be debugged. There is a way for that. It will be explained later in the course when it's needed. As for now, server-side code debugging is just okay. So we have the breakpoint set. Let's run the software in the debug mode. If you run it as regular, well, then the breakpoint will not matter. So the software will just continue running and will not stop. But if we debug it on server, then after a short while, again, everything should, a tab should open here, and we should be able to click a button. And then if everything went well, when we click the button, the execution of the software should stop, and we should be redirected to the debugging perspective in Eclipse. Here is where the execution of our software stopped, and here is the stack trace. Well, there is no stack trace nowadays. Here is some information about threads, and here is the code. And we can navigate that by using function keys. So F5 to F8, they are useful for navigating the execution. F5 means step into, which means if the debugged line or the breakpoint line is a function call or a method call, then we will go inside that method. If we press F6, we will just move to the next line. F7 means step return, so we are continuing the execution in the current scope, current method, until we go out, and then we stop immediately there. And F8 means continue execution of the software until the next breakpoint, of course. So, well, the only thing we can do right now, of course, we could just trace the code, but there is just one line to be executed. So, and now it's over, so we can press F8, hopefully. Yeah, and that should indicate the label is here. Of course, when I click the button next time, then again the breakpoint is still there. So I can switch it off, and then I can continue running the application, and then there shouldn't be any. Okay, so let's close the browser and terminate the server, and let's continue with the slides. Okay, so currently our demo application or hello world application just, well, accepts some interaction from the user, the button that the user can click, but does nothing else otherwise, and it would be nice if we could just do something with it. So we will extend that a little, and this will show you how easy it is and how straightforward it is to code applications with Vaadin. So let us create a text field. So the plan is that we will ask for the name of the user, and when the user clicks the button, we will say, thank you for clicking blah blah your name. So in order to get something from the user, we need to have a text field where the user can actually enter something. So these 2 lines should be enough. You might remember that I said that we need to add components to the layout. Well, this is that I created the text field and I didn't add the component to the layout. So if I run it, then nothing should change. So the text field that I just created will not be visible, hopefully, once this starts. So as you can see, nothing happened. So there is a text field which is created, but it's not visible at all. So let's add it to the layout. Now it should be there. So we can run it to see that it actually is there. Alright, we have a text box with a label, enter your name, and then a button that says click me. So of course that doesn't do anything yet because we haven't programmed that. But so now we should do something with that text field, and in response to a button click we should just copy what's in the text field so that it looks nicer. So let's do that. So here we have the label. So it's new label, thank you for clicking, and we should add what's in the field get value. So as you can see, the APIs are quite intuitive. The method names are as you would expect them to be, and this simple piece of code should, well, do what it says. So now when we click the button, whatever was entered in the text field, it should appear in the label that we add. So if I add my name here, oh, it doesn't work now. Oh, it works. Yes, it's that it doesn't look very nice. Okay, so I'm entering my name again, and then I click the button, and it says what it should. Okay, so now we can test that as I just shown. And what happens when we clear the field and click the button? Well, then it says thank you for clicking and nothing else. So we can improve the click listener. That's something I will not be typing. It's just something that I can show you what we can do. So we get the name. Since it's a string, we can check if it's empty or not. If it is, we can replace the name of the user with anonymous user so that the final label will look a little better. We can of course test that. And this is how it finally looks. So you can see that it looks pretty much as a regular desktop application, as I said before. Okay, now for deploying the project. So once we are done with the code and we are satisfied with it, we tested it that it works correctly. So we have to do something with it to be available. And it's very simple in Eclipse. You just right-click the project name, export var file, specify location of that file, and this is the file that you should deliver to your servlet container. So Apache Tomcat, for example, has an admin interface which allows you to upload var files directly and automatically deploying them. So this is the only thing you need to do. All right. So the summary of this talk. So what we learned today, hopefully, is what are the dependencies of Vaadin and what is required, what is not required but optional, what is strongly recommended. You hopefully will be able to follow the steps to set up Eclipse. I've just done that with a clean installation of Eclipse. So the steps are accurate and they should work. If you run into problems, please notify me and I will update them or try to help you with them. And then we started writing Vaadin applications. So events and listeners were briefly mentioned, and this debugging the server-side code and deploying the application were also covered. And what's coming up next on the next 3 lectures is the overview of components, the basic principles. It's our guest lecture, and then the lecture about layouts, themes, and styles, which should be, as I said previously, enough to get you going with exercises that we will come up with, at least the simple ones.